Hi, in this video we are going to talk about supercritical solvent impregnation, that is an alternative methodology to functionalize polymers. In this technique, supercritical CO2 is used as a carrier of molecules into polymer due to its high diffusivity and low viscosity. This technique has some advantages compared to other ones, such as the possibility to use moderate operating temperatures do not compromise the stability of heat-sensitive substances. The loading rate can be controlled by modifying the operating parameters, such as pressure, time, temperature, or the pressurization rate. Low amounts of polar solvents can be added to enhance the solubility of compounds in the CO2. Therefore, both polar and non-polar compounds can be impregnated. And also, CO2 turns into gas after depressurization, so the polymers obtained are solvent-free and the final evaporation step is usually not required. In the screen, we can see the flowchart of the supercritical solvent impregnation. As any supercritical device, it has a cool bath, a condenser, a pump, just the CO2 pump in this case, a preheater, a vessel, and a back pressure regulator. The impregnation process can be carried out in two modes. A batch mode, in which the impregnation vessel is a closed system that contains the active substance and the polymer that are in supercritical conditions for a period of time, and a semi-continuous mode, in which the CO2 stream and/or the active substance is renewed into the system either by using one or two vessels. The impregnation of polymer is carried out in three steps. First, the solubilization of the compound into the CO2 and its saturation into the vessel. Second, the swelling of the polymer matrix and the impregnation of the active substance. Under supercritical conditions, the polymer swells and opens its sails. The impregnation will take place mainly in the amorphous region of the polymer. Once the impregnation time has passed, it is carried out the depressurization of the system, providing then a matrix ready to use. But which factors govern the process? Well, all factors that affect loading rate are closely related, which makes supercritical impregnation a complex process. The interaction between these three elements must be properly controlled to lead to a successful impregnation. First, the interaction CO2 active substance must be adequated. To do so, the substance has to be well solubilized at the supercritical conditions. The solvating capacity of CO2 can be modulated by pressure and temperature, and also by adding small amounts of polar solvents. However, if CO2 active substance affinity are very high, then the partition coefficient will not be in favor of the polymer, and CO2 will drag the active substance during the depressurization phase. This situation could lead to a poor impregnation yield. Second, the interaction CO2 polymer must be favorable as well. This factor is governed by the swelling capacity and the polymer and interaction between CO2 and the functional groups of the polymer. Regarding to swelling capacity, it is related to the crystallinity and glass transition temperature, which is associated to changes in the amorphous region of the polymer, which determine the mobility of the polymer chains. This swelling capacity can be also enhanced at certain operating conditions. Several studies have focused on the interaction between CO2 and different polymers, and it is generally observed that a higher CO2 density will favor the solid loading due to a better polymer plasticization and to the increase of the internal diffusion coefficients. Finally, regarding to the interaction between the active substance and the polymer, as I mentioned before, this affinity can be enhanced by the addition of solvents, since its presence intervenes in both the solubility and the swelling capacity. Time is also a very important parameter, mainly when the polymer has certain diameter, since impregnation is a diffusional mechanism and it requires a certain time to diffuse into the polymer. When active substance and polymer has a good interaction, The partition coefficient is in favor of the polymer, and chemical and/or physical interaction may occur between the active substance and the matrix, which could lead to a better dispersion of the solute and higher impregnation rates.